You all know how The View TV show gets me wound up. Well, with their latest guest, I was even more on fire. The lovely ladies of The View. One of their latest guests was a gentleman named Elie Mystal. He's a Harvard-educated constitutional scholar, and he's the justice correspondent for The Nation. And he went on The View to talk about his new book and to tell all of us how things need to be done, and of course, to entertain the nitwits on The View. He said a lot of things. I'm only going to show a few clips of the show, and I'll let you do the rest. You can go look for the full interview. You can get wound up on your own. But here we go. I'm going to show you the first clip, how he talks about why he wrote his book. It's very brief. Hang on.
Why you wanted to write it.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to do with this book is explain in layman's terms what Republicans are doing to the law. Because I honestly believe that if everybody understood it, they'd be as outraged as I am about it, and they'd be willing to do something about it. Look, folks, the law is complicated. I'm not going to lie about that. But it's not beyond the reach of most literate people, all right? It's not sending a rocket to Mars and making it land just so it doesn't, right? You can read. You can understand the laws that govern this country, and you can understand how Republicans are obviously trying to manipulate those laws to take away the rights of minorities, women, the LGBTQ community. You can see it all, and I try to explain it all in ways that people can understand so that we can fight them.
He basically wrote the book to explain to people why Republicans are destroying the law, that every law they write is basically trash, and how they manipulate minorities, women, and of course, the LGBTQ, because we all know every politician who's elected has to be in support of these people, has to bow down to the cancel culture, and basically has to deal with all the bullshit. You can't be against anything, but he's blaming Republicans as a whole. And quite frankly, I have to disagree, because if you see, obviously, this guy's a Democrat with his other partners sitting with him on The View. He's a Democrat. He's a liberal. And he thinks he knows the way to solve all the world's woes with this book he wrote. And he explained it. Republicans don't care about minorities, women, and of course the LGBTQ. But here's what Sunny Hostin had to say about the book, because we all know how bright she is.
I have to tell you, I loved this book so very much. The first chapter, canceling trash people is not a constitutional crisis. Chapter 9, the taking of black land, was another favorite of mine, and reverse racism is not a thing. I just think it's...
Oh, and she loved it. She just loved reading the book, especially the first chapter where he wrote that canceling trash culture is not a constitutional crisis. And she also loved chapter 9 that says taking black land is wrong and racist, and reverse racism is not a thing. Well, Sunny Hostin, I have to certainly disagree with you on the reversed racism thing, because Elie Mystal can come on that show and talk all his shit, and it's all racist because he's a black man. It's okay for him to say it. So I guess white people or Hispanic people or Asian people, you can't, there's no racism against them, or, you know what I mean? The racism is only done to African Americans. Everybody who ever said anything or wrote anything or has done anything to an African American person that they didn't like, that's racist. But every other culture There's no racism. An African American can do something to me because he doesn't like me, but he didn't do it because I'm white. No, because that's reverse racism, and there's no such thing. Well, that's what that nitwit Hostin has to say. She's a fool, again, and if she wants to believe his garbage, and I don't care if he's a Harvard-educated scholar, that means shit to me. I'm not, never was, never will be, but I do have common sense, and I do see what's going on in this country, and the bullshit in Ellie's book is a little bit too far-fetched. So the next clip I'm going to show you is that other woman. I don't even know her name. I don't want to know her name, but she's sitting there, and you'll see she has her Ukraine shirt on. She's supporting the Ukraine. So watch this quick clip.
I live in Florida, so I'm like on ground zero of where all of this is happening. I'm out of my mind about the bills banning conversations about race and ethnicity and LGBTQ, just even mentioning gender identity in primary schools. But some will say, okay, so are you arguing for throwing out the Constitution? Should the Constitution be thrown out? What do we do? Is it a living document? Or is it a sacred document?
It's certainly not sacred, all right? Let's start there. The Constitution is kind of trash.
She's from Florida, and she's out of her mind being from Florida, because that's ground zero for all the bad legislation that's being put through any state house. Apparently, it's ground zero for everybody. All the bills against race and gender and ethnicity, and of course the LGBTQ. The state of Florida doesn't want things taught in school about critical race theory. They don't want things in school about gender. There's boys and there's girls. They don't want to push their if you will, I don't even know what to call it, but they're trying to teach kids that you don't have to just be a boy or a girl. You can be whatever you want. You can be a cat. You can be a dog. You can be a trash barrel outside your house. Whatever you want to call yourself, it's okay. Well, no, it's not okay in Florida, because the governor has a brain, and he doesn't want this garbage shoved down kids' throats because these liberals want it out in the mainstream. It's wrong. Let the kids learn for themselves, and as they get older, then they can decide. And if they decide they want to identify as a fucking unicorn, then so be it. Let them. Don't teach it in school, and keep the LGBTQ flags and literature and signs and teachings of these teachers who try to push their agenda with that in a classroom. It doesn't belong in a school. These are little kids trying to learn, trying to make friends, trying to find their way. They don't need these teachers shoving all this trash down their throat. In the next clip, I'll let you judge it for yourself. Here's what Ellie has to say.
Let's just talk as adults for a second.
What did you say? It's what?
It's kind of trash.
Trash.
It was written by slavers and colonists and white people who were willing to make deals with slavers and colonists. They didn't ask anybody who looked like me what they thought about the Constitution. They didn't say, "Oh, Jim, come over here. What do you think about this old Constitution?" Well, massa, I sure don't like how you sell my children. But I gotta say, man, this King George, he needs to be stopped.
Right? The Constitution is trash. It was written by slavers and colonists, by white people making deals with the colonists. He can say, "Massa," or "Yes, massa," or "Yes, I'll do this, massa," or "No, oh, can I be involved in the writing of the Constitution, massa?" "Oh, no, you can't. It's only for white people." But Ellie can say that on TV, and if that's not racist, then what is? What is? If I were to say that to somebody, I would be, forget it. I don't even know what would happen to me, but I would be blacklisted from everywhere because of the color of my skin. Even if I was making a joke, because you can't even joke anymore. If I went around saying, "Yes, massa," "No, massa," to whoever, I would be blacklisted from everything. But good old Elie Mystal can say whatever he wants because he's African American, And of course, he's a constitutional scholar. So he must be right. He must be right. And all those nitwits surrounding him on The View are just eating up that garbage like they do everything else. And they spew their shit. And they brought him on that show to spew his shit. I'm going to show you one more clip, and then I'll finish up and tell you my thoughts.
Rewrite it? Do you want to rewrite it?
I could, right? I could rewrite parts of it in a tweet, right? Like, how about popular election for the president? People vote, not land.
That's not even in there, is it?
I'm saying
Yeah,
if I was rewriting it, we could do it in a tweet, right?
Yeah. You know.
Term limits for Supreme Court justices. And how about no states' rights when it comes to health care, elections, policing, and guns?
And my dearest love, Joy Behar, asked Ellie if the Constitution should be rewritten, or if he could rewrite the Constitution. And his response was, I could rewrite it in a tweet. And she was confused. She looked confused, so he said it again. I could rewrite most of the Constitution in a tweet. He would write that elections for president should be the popular vote. People should be voting, not land. I'm not a scholar, but I don't know what that means. How does land vote? And the people that were voting, a lot of them were buried in the land, if you know what I mean, this last election. So I don't know what people vote, not land means. And he said, term limits should be for Supreme Court justices. They should have term limits. Why only the Supreme Court justices, Ellie? Why not the entire Congress? Why are those people allowed to keep on running and keep on running and spend 40, 50 years in Congress? Why is that okay? If you want term limits for Supreme Court justices, everybody should have term limits. There should not be one politician that should be able to spend 30, 40, 50, 60 years sitting in Washington, collecting money, making a fortune, doing nothing. If anyone needs term limits, it's Congress people. I don't give a shit about the Supreme Court justices. Half of them are in their 70s or 80s anyways. They don't need term limits. They're not going to be around that long. But these Congress people, Pelosi, she's all busted up. She keeps getting Botox and shit. Schumer, you don't know where the hell he is. Come on. Congress needs term limits, not judges. If the president has term limits, governors have term limits, mayors have term limits, why don't Congress have term limits? Or any politician for that matter. Even in Rhode Island, there's some of these nitwits been in that state house for 20, 30 years, still doing the same thing, which is nothing. Term limits for everybody, okay? And the last thing he said he would put, that states should not have the right, should not have rights to tell people what they can do regarding health care, elections, policing, and guns. So what Ellie is saying, I think, is that he wants the federal government to control what every individual state does. We know they tried to do that with their crap voter ID, so anybody could go vote without an ID, so these nitwits could keep getting elected the way they do, hence Sleepy Joe. Why should the federal government put their hands in the way states run elections? It's wrong. Ellie knows it's wrong, but he's such a Democrat. He's such a liberal, and he wants everything his way because he's African American, and he thinks everybody else is racist. He thinks the Constitution is racist. It was, after all, written by slavers and colonists. Come on, man. This is 2022, and they're pushing this shit. Every day it gets worse and worse and worse. And he doesn't want the states to have a say in policing in their cities and towns. He wants the federal government to run that too. If the federal government ran policing, there wouldn't be any police. Okay, because half of those people in Congress, Democrats, want to defund the police, and we all know how that's going. And guns? What do you mean guns? They want to take people's guns away. They want to ban law-abiding citizens from owning firearms, be it a handgun, an AR-15, shotguns you can go buy at Walmart. But if a law-abiding citizen with zero criminal history from when they were born, they should be allowed to own an AR-15, mainly because it's legal to buy it. They're not smuggling them in from Nicaragua. They're not buying them off the street. They're buying them legally. Maybe the guns he's talking about are the guns in the hands of every criminal that's walking around streets in this country. They're the ones that are getting the guns with the obliterated serial number. They're making the ghost guns now. You name it, they're out there. Sometimes the police are actually outgunned. And the federal government and Elie Mystal want them to be involved in who can have a gun or how many police we could have and what the police can do. In my opinion, if it was up to this guy, okay, the police would be driving around like they do in the UK with no firearms. That right there is a mystery to me. If they need a firearm, other people have to come and give them the gun. No, the police need the weapons they have. They need more weapons because there's a lot of times the police get outgunned, okay? And this guy doesn't want states to have any control over it. The federal government, all those buffoons in Congress, and thing one and thing two in the White House, they need to make the rules on policing and guns. You can't take guns out of the hands of good people because you can't even take guns out of the hands of criminals. You see it every day. It's out there. I certainly see it every day. The trash that this guy is spewing is just something else to push the Democratic agenda, to make people think, hey, you know, he might be right. Maybe we should go to our local legislature and tell them, you know, how about this? How about we vote to let the federal government deal with police hiring and how much policing we need and who can own a gun and who can't own a gun. Because we know they're trying to do that with their gun control, which is not working, obviously. Because like I said, every criminal out there has a gun. They can get them easier than a law-abiding citizen. A law-abiding citizen has to wait a certain amount of days for a background check if they're trying to buy a firearm. A criminal can go down to the corner, some dude will open his trunk and he'll have a bag full of handguns. Take what you want, take your pick, whatever you want. That's the kind of shit that the federal government should be stopping, because the cities and towns are overworked and underpaid and understaffed. Okay? This guy's a nitwit. I disagree with everything he has to say. And of course, you know how I feel about The View, and leave it to them to have this guy on their show to talk about his new book on how wrong everything is in this country and how right he could make it by implementing what he says are the right things. And that's it. That's all I'm going to say about it. That's my rant. The View is The View. That's their view. It's not my view, and I'm pretty sure it's not your view. That's all I got. Thank you for watching, as always. If you haven't already liked this video, please consider liking it. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Hit the notification bell. Please share my videos if you will. I hope everybody is healthy and safe, and I'll see you real soon with something else. Have a great night.